Hello, I'm Phil Rickards, Head of BM Solutions. I'm delighted to talk to you today at the 2021 Buy-to-Let Forum. So a quick look at what I'm going to cover in the next 15 minutes or so. I've been asked to look at the impact of the pandemic on the mortgage industry and buy-to-let in particular, and how the industry has reacted. I also want to look at some positivity on the horizon, where the threats to buy-to-let and the private rented sector lie, and also where the opportunities for you as advisors and for us in the buy-to-let sector and private rented sector lie. I'm also not going to talk in any great detail about the pandemic itself. You'll be pleased to hear, because I think we're all probably fed up of hearing about that. So just taking a look back to March 2020, I can't believe it's that long ago. I really wanted to emphasize that when we went into lockdown a year ago, it was particularly bad for everybody, not just lenders. So it was bad for advisors, it was bad for solicitors, valuers, customers, and you in particular as advisors had a pretty bad challenge to deal with. It was, from a lender's perspective, valuations on hold, the market pretty much going into shutdown as we couldn't physically value properties, and some lenders had to stop lending altogether. And in the case of BM Solutions, it's a great example. We didn't have a remote valuation offering or an AVM, so we had to very quickly come up with something and bring it to market, and we did that within a matter of weeks. So some good things came of the pandemic. You know, we now have a remote valuation offering, which is part of our business as usual process, and that's adding a considerable benefit to our business overall. I think one of the things that went missing to us all really was the challenge of having processing teams leaving the office because it wasn't possible to socially distance. You know, we had to very quickly equip them with laptops. And processing a mortgage at home is very difficult to processing a mortgage in the office when you've got everything around you. But we did it. Solicitors struggled. You know, we were sending stuff to solicitors' offices. They weren't there to pick it up. That was causing a considerable delay in the process. And the government, in its infinite wisdom, came up with a brilliant scheme, which was the payment holiday scheme. But it was done at very short notice to lenders, and this caused us all a whole world of pain, as we remember. But again, you know, we dealt with it, we got through it. And even simple things like mass ordering of redemption statements, as there was a lot of remortgage activity in the market, caused problems and hold-ups in the process. And a big shout out to all the industry's BDMs, who basically had to become an extension of the processing teams and become a very important link between the mortgage advisor themselves and the lenders' processing teams. And some of that still exists today. And to put this into perspective, in the case of our own BM business development team, in the last 12 months, they've handled over 350,000 emails and calls from advisors and helped them get through the process. So definitely never been a year like it. But from, you know, potential meltdown to possible boom, what does the new normal look like? Well, that's a phrase we're all used to hearing. Has there been a mini boom? I think yes, there has, aided somewhat by the stamp duty holiday, which great to see the Chancellor for one of the first times I can remember giving buy-to-let a step up. You as advisors have definitely learned how to work really well with lenders and have been very, very supportive in some of the challenges that lenders have had. And equally, I hope you as advisors will see that lenders have been, you know, accommodating to some of the challenges that brokers have had. So the industry's definitely come together. It's sort of accelerated the use of technology as well. The way we communicate has changed. Zoom meetings, team meetings are part of everyday life now. And that's certainly going to continue into the future. And how much of that we'll do, nobody really knows at the moment. Just a word of caution that, you know, the majority of lenders, certainly Lloyds Banking Group, processing teams, are still working from home. So we still have those challenges that we had at the start. We've just become better equipped at dealing with them. So let's stay calm, let's carry on working together, and let's really keep this industry going. A chart that you'll all really sit up and hopefully take notice of. So back in 2012, the mortgage market was split pretty much evenly between mortgage advisors, you the intermediary, and branch networks, lenders branches, writing equally amounts of mortgage business. And at the end of last year, the amount of mortgage business written by the intermediary market was just under 80%. That's a staggering amount of business, and just testament to the work that you do, and also proving that customers need your advice more than ever, and long may that continue. A little look at the buy-to-let market overall and gross mortgage lending. Now, this is a well-used slide of mine. I'm not going to talk in any detail about it, but it just goes to show, and I really like this slide because it goes to show the resilience that the buy-to-let market gives us, and just how resilient landlords themselves are. So way back in 2009, the credit crunch, you can see that nice, slow, steady, sustainable build to a 2016 market of around 40 billion. And then post 2016, a whole host of challenges, tax changes, stamp duty changes layered into the buy-to-let market. And still you can see the market being very resilient. And I'm sure we all would have signed up for last year's market of 37 billion, just down from 42 the year before. I've deliberately left the forecast blank because nobody really knows what's coming, but my prediction would certainly be for a market in the high 30s, maybe even early 40s, as buy-to-let completions and pipelines still look really strong. A good start to 2021 already. Nobody likes to talk about threats and the negative stuff, but I think all the talk in the press about the mass exodus from the capital. If you look at the ONS reports, hundreds of thousands of foreign workers leaving the capital. There's definitely been a downturn in rents and tenant demands off the back of that. What we don't really see, though, is if and indeed when those workers will return to the capital, and we'll see a more normal life in London in particular. That is sure to happen. To what extent, nobody really knows. And then you see that sort of same behaviour spreading into other city centres and city centre apartments in particular, where I think the last 12 months has made people realise that they certainly want more outdoor living space, maybe a small garden, but there is a limited amount of property available with those amenities. So again, it's will city centre life return to normal, and when, and if so, by how much? As businesses certainly locate back into the city centres, but probably not as much as we've seen historically. So certainly some challenges there. Student lets, we've definitely seen a challenge on the student let market, but at some point, and probably sooner rather than later, students will return and they will want to enjoy that genuine life away from home, student life, and enjoy the whole experience. In terms of tenants and mortgage arrears, well, from a tenant's perspective, we're yet to see the effect of the eviction ban, which will be lifted in May. And one of the debt charities, Step Change, predicted that 150,000 tenants may be evicted from their properties, and that feels extreme, but there's certainly a challenge to come there. And in terms of mortgage arrears, from our own BM perspective, we're not seeing any real adverse effect on mortgage arrears yet. The good news was that landlords were included in the payment holiday scheme, which again gave them some breathing space. So overall, there's some things to keep an eye on there. And in terms of tighter mortgage criteria, we've not seen mass tightening of criteria in the buy-to-let market yet, but will an economic downturn or extended recession mean pressure on criteria? One to keep an eye on, I think. And I've listed the green agenda as a threat, but it's also an opportunity to clean up our act, obviously, so it's a good thing. The threat comes from landlords having to potentially adhere to government proposals of having all new tenancies C-rated from an EPC perspective by 2025, and all tenancies by 2028. That could put pressure on their portfolios and having to bring those existing stocks up to speed. And will it mean a change of property makeup? Will landlords look for more energy efficient, newer properties? Again, one to keep an eye on. But from a lender's perspective, that could also be an opportunity to do some innovative things around the green agenda. On to more positive things. So opportunities for the private rented sector and indeed buy-to-let going forwards. The latest BDRC landlord survey talks about increased tenant demand, so being at a 5-year high. Landlords seeing increased confidence in their own lettings business, and 88% of landlords still report making a profit from their lettings businesses, and fewer landlords telling us that they intend to reduce portfolios in the coming 12 months. So certainly from a landlord sentiment perspective, there's a good feeling out there. And as the job support scheme unwinds, there could potentially be a greater need for renting if we see a tightening of mainstream residential affordability. More and more people may need to rent. And certainly I've talked about that lifestyle changes, people looking for outdoor space. Will you see a try before you buy type approach? Either way, whether we see a return to cities or that search for gardens and outdoor space, there could be some good opportunities for the rental sector in there. Residential lending affordability is already tightening, and equally you could extend that into more and more single people looking for properties. Horrible to talk about, but divorce rates on the up. So there's a lot of things that could happen around that. And the HMO market in particular has been really buoyant and popular over the last few years as landlords look for greater yields off the back of pressures on portfolios from tax changes, etc. Could you see more call for young professionals sharing as they look to move back into city centre offices, etc. And lots of talk in the press about holiday lets. The term staycation has become a really popular term. More and more people will definitely holiday in the UK, and lots of talk about holiday lets being a great thing for the future. So I'm sure we'll see a lot more opportunity in the holiday let space. So overall, some really good opportunities for the private renter sector and buy-to-let in general. And in summary, there has always been a need for a strong private renter sector. I've talked many times about the last 150 years and throughout time, various challenges on the sector. The growth in buy-to-let from the late 80s and the mass sell-off of all the social housing stock. We haven't replaced that social housing stock, and supply in general looks tight. So at some point, the government is going to wake up and really understand the need for a really strong private rented sector. And if we see that continued erosion of stock in the sector, I think overall there's going to be a big challenge. So we definitely need strong private rented sector in the UK. I've already talked about increased tenant demand, and we're seeing that. Certainly there's an increase in rents across the UK outside of the capital. And we need buy-to-let mortgages to support growth in the private renter sector and to support that demand. And talking about buy-to-let mortgages and lending in general, from a BM perspective, the traditional buy-to-let market. So we specialise, as you know, in the small portfolio, medium-sized portfolio, traditional rental coverages, assessed buy-to-let lending. We've had our biggest year in new business since 2007, and that's phenomenal in the last 12 months. So there's plenty to go at in the traditional sector. And we've certainly seen a rise in buy-to-let specialist lending. Lots of talk about limited company. There was, I think, 42,000 limited companies registered to hold property last year. It was the second biggest limited company registration at Companies House. So there's plenty of choice all around for the specialist lending sector and the traditional sector to all play and support buy-to-let lending in general. And we all know product transfers have been the lifeblood of our industry through tough times, and particularly at the start of the pandemic. Lots of product transfer business being written. And again, just to put that into perspective, from a BM position, we had our biggest ever year on product transfers last year. So that's a strong part of the market. And I've talked about the split between branch-based lending and intermediary-based lending. there's never been a better time to be a mortgage advisor. You know, landlords need your advice more than ever. And I think overall, I'd finish up by saying I'm cautiously optimistic about the future of the buy-to-let market. It's been through lots of challenges historically, and it's always survived. And landlords themselves have proved just how resilient they can be. Thank you for listening. I hope you found that interesting, and enjoy the rest of your day.